All right, there it goes. Looks like the internet knows we're here. That's good. The internet knows we're here. That's awesome. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, everybody. We have a special guest today. We have David Jetty. David Jetty is the Volunteer Legislative Director for Public Bank LA. As you guys know, AB 857 passed, which allows public banks to be created in the state of California. David has been a big force behind that, and he's going to kind of unpack some of what we can expect next. David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Ron.
Absolutely. So let's start out basic. Now, public banking to the general person doesn't really sound all that sexy, but in reality, what a public bank can do is very sexy. So let's start out on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being sexy, 10 being I changed my pants 5 times today. How sexy is public banking?
Oh, well, if you're like me with my particular predilections, this will really put you over the top. But, I understand why, people maybe don't keep this in the side drawer next to their bed. But let me tell you a little bit about it, and then you can make your own decision. Public banking, very simply, is about taking what is a function currently performed purely by private commercial banks, right? The management of deposits, the making of loans, and the backing up of those deposits with things like insurance and collateralization. That is currently managed entirely by private entities with private shareholders. We tend to call them Wall Street. That includes a lot of different kinds of businesses, but the most important kind of business on Wall Street is a bank. Banks issue our money, and they are the way that we interact with our money. And we've handed that power over, which is effectively a public power driven by the public understanding of what money is.
Right.
To
It's
private
our
entities.
money.
Right.
It's our money.
It has value because we give it that value. Right.
Right. Yes.
Right. We've given that monopoly power over to private entities. So really, they've seized it and kept control of it for the most of the history of this country.
And they usually do positive charitable things with it, right? I mean, Wall Street, usually they invest back into the community and they do wonderful things.
They're always very, very, conservative with how much they pay themselves and make sure to return as much all that value back to the public as possible. No, of course they don't. They take huge risks with it. They pay themselves huge bonuses, and they wring as much value out of everybody that interacts with them, whether they're account holders or mortgagers, and then also city governments and county governments. And the push for public banks are really spurred on by the lack of choices that governments have when taking our tax dollars. When we pay our taxes, they have to put those taxes into a bank account. And that bank account right now is a private bank account. It's a bank account at a private bank. So all of the value that is generated by these large stores of cash that belong to all of us is used then to make loans to industries that extract fossil fuels or build prisons for immigrants or any number of awful industries. So
now, how would it be used alternatively with a public bank? Where would those funds go?
Right. So the idea is if we can found our own banks as public entities. So if the city of Los Angeles or the county of San Francisco, county of San Francisco could form their own bank, they could place that money in a deposit account that is owned by the public. And then the money as it sits there can be used to make loans or to extend credit back to the city or to people who live in the city, businesses that operate in the city, where it will earn interest to then return that value back to the public depositors whose money it is, right? Effectively, if we own our own banks and we put our money in our own banks, the value created by the sort of concentration of that money can be paid back to the public instead of being siphoned off by Wall Street shareholders.
So basically, instead of your money going to Wall Street, going to some shareholder, it goes back into your community. And this is the value that we're already generating as a community because pretty much all people participate in banks to some degree. You kind of have to function.
Yeah, I mean, any economy, even in a perfectly equitable economy, is going to need some kind of means of exchange, and that's what money is. And the places where we store that money and what we do with it when it's not being used, That's what banks are for. And, we trust others to do that for us now. But AB 857 opens the door for cities and counties to found their own banks with social purposes, restricting their lending to the jurisdictions where they operate and on loans which not only make money for the bank, and it doesn't have to be a lot, right? There's no shareholder to pay off in this case. So you can operate at, whatever profitability level the city wants their bank to operate at.
Well, so let's back up a little bit first.
Sure.
So we've established what public banking is. So as far as the history in California, and feel free to correct anything that I might get a little wobbly here, but we have Measure B on the ballot, which was thanks to folks like you, and I know Josh Androsky referred me to you. I know there were a lot of activists that got that done on the ground, showing up to council meeting after council meeting until, and these were Josh's words back when I had him on, during the election season, that they were just tired of seeing you guys because you weren't going to give up. And, eventually you kind of got this on the ballot. It did not pass, unfortunately. It came very close, but it did not pass. I was stoked to go vote for it, and I did, but unfortunately it did not pass. Fast forward a little bit, AB 857 is signed into law by Gavin Newsom. That happened relatively recently. What that does is that permits 10 public banks to happen in the state of California. So is that pretty much where we're at?
Yes, yeah. Measure B was a first salvo, right? And we were asking the city permission to adjust the charter to make the way for a public bank. That was one of the hurdles that cities, especially LA in particular, had in exploring this option. The voters voted that down, I think, mainly because they wanted more detail. So one of the things we did was we went to the state legislature and we said, here's the detail. These are all the things we need to adjust. And also, here are all the restrictions we're going to put on these public banks. Here's the definitions that you're looking for in terms of who is going to govern them, how cities can approve them and have that democratic influence over their founding. How will they be insured? Who will regulate them? All of those questions are answered by AB 857. So now cities can come back to this knowing that public banks are possible. They're in the law. They're defined. They're safe and secure. All the both houses and the governor have signed off on the prudence of this bill. So now we can talk about the specifics. How big will this bank be for LA or any city? What will it focus on? How will it make loans? Those questions also need to be answered. And then once they are, and a comprehensive plan that city council is going to put together, the people will be able to sign off on that again, probably through a city council vote.
So what are the next steps then? So as far as we want to see a public bank in LA or San Francisco or wherever. And then a side question real quick here. Why was 10 the number? Is there a particular reason 10 was the magic number or?
We obviously went in hoping to just open the door for public banking, but we have to take this step by step. And as part of negotiating through the Senate, we made a compromise around limiting the rollout of this new license so that regulators could know that they weren't going to get rushed with applications. And frankly, private competitors who do have influence in these legislatures don't want to be flooded with competition from public entities. We think that 10 licenses will be enough for enough variety of different types of banks across enough different types of jurisdictions, sizes of jurisdictions to prove the concept, and that we'll probably be back in the legislature in 4 to 5 years with some results saying, hey, we need this everywhere. We need to lift this number. There's nothing special about the number 10. Okay. There are, how many banks do you need to cover all of California? It really depends on how big they are and what they do.
Sure.
You could have 80 small banks. You could have 5 big banks. It's kind of arbitrary.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned those big banks. They don't like competition. You gotta love capitalism. They love the free market when it's convenient. But all right. So then, what are the specific next steps? Like what can citizens do? Is a Measure B or something similar going to be on a ballot in the future? What are the next steps to have a citizen walk into a public bank in Los Angeles as soon as possible?
Well, we're lucky here in LA because our city council is really motivated to move this along. our city council president is introducing a measure today, which will be a request for qualifications for basically consultants to work for the city to formulate the plan. So this is going to be a banking expert who's going to come in and build some kind of viability or business plan. But parallel to this, we as organizers are going to be engaging directly with neighborhood councils and advocates for the unhoused and for climate and income justice, who we hope to rally around a public people's effort to influence this process. So we expect a public bank LA to be closely connected to the communities it intends to serve, rather than one which will be run by an appointed official or sort of captured by city government itself. In order for public banks to remain public and transparent, they need to not just be the tools of politicians, but the arms of actual democratic engagement with finance. So we're going to be building those sort of the connective tissue between this bank and the people over the next 6 months to a year. We're going to be holding public events and public forums for people to come in and tell the city what kind of bank they think is necessary and how they want this bank to be run. So that's a place where we need everyone to get involved, is to show up and care about who is writing this business plan and what they're putting into that plan. And that's going to happen at meetings all over the city.
So basically to kind of like really condense that and simplify it, if we want a bank that's actually going to serve the public, let us know what we need to do.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we don't want this to be just something that we conceive, or some McKinsey person comes in and conceives, right? We want frontline communities to be at the forefront of choosing this credit policy. That's how this will solve inequality and be more than just a finance tool. So in the short term, the city council is going to vote on that. We're going to want to support that effort and influence it. And then over the next year or so, you're going to see that plan formulate. And eventually there will either be a city council vote. We don't think it's necessary to have another ballot measure, but the city attorney may have a different point of view. So we'll keep an eye out on that report. But eventually a plan will be submitted to the regulators, and hopefully it'll be approved, and we'll have a bank in short order.
So looking at this big picture now, on the national scale, what does it mean if California gets a bunch of public banks, if that is successful, if people see what that means for community, what kind of effect do you see this having on the national scale? Do you think other states will follow suit? Do you think it could kind of make this country look a little bit different because we're all going to be kind of pumping more of our own resources into our backyard?
Yes, I think that this bill, the most important piece of this is a real legitimization and mainstreaming of public banking in this century, right? We haven't had a real public bank founded for a long time. The only one still operating is North Dakota, which was formed literally 100 years ago. So we now have a modern context for what public banking means, even if that's limited and sort of restricted for now. It's a start, and it's in a really big economy. California is huge. We have a lot of major cities, which means there will be many chances for us to form the model bank that will succeed. Not all public banks will succeed, but they probably have a better chance than private banks. And once we get the hang of it and we have some models to copy, we think that will spread quickly, because there's a lot of upside for cities and counties to found these. So I think that you'll see similar bills to AB 857 emerge in legislatures, and you'll see cities following that with their own models. And depending on the outcome of the presidential election, we might have some help at the federal level, with explicit direction to the FDIC and the Federal Reserve saying, hey, these kinds of banks, you have to accommodate them. They are a part of our economic infrastructure forever now. And that's the big shift, is we're going to bring some capital under public control and hope that mitigates some of its harm to the environment and working people.
Yeah, no kidding. So where can people go to learn more about this, to follow it, not just in California, but to kind of just see the entire story so they can know what to maybe try in their community? What's the best resource for people to learn more?
You should go to CaliforniaPublicBankingAlliance.org. and follow us on our various socials. That'll give you all the up-to-date news on what we're doing, actions that can get you involved in California in particular. And there's plenty of resources there if you're trying to found a public banking movement in your local town or city. And then if you are interested in working at a state level, we're going to be having an advance, which is our version of a retreat in December. So legislators or activists in this space that might want to attend, they can reach out to Public Bank Alliance, California Public Banking Alliance, and we can try to arrange for that too, so you can see what we're doing.
Wonderful. And for everyone watching, we will have a link to that below in the comments. So there will be a link below. David, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for everything that you're doing in regards to public banking. If I can ever be of help, let me know, and keep on fighting the good fight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ron.
Cheers.